The presenting sponsor of Andrew Talks to Chefs is Mise. Mise is the chef-created recipe operating system that makes your professional kitchen life easier with unprecedented tools for recording, scaling, analyzing, costing, and teaching recipes. Much of it at the press of a virtual button. Learn more at getmeeze.com/Andrew. That's GETMEEZ.com/Andrew. This episode of Andrew Talks to Chefs is supported in part by San Pellegrino Sparkling Natural Mineral Water. For the past 125 years, San Pellegrino has supported the art of fine dining in all of its ever-changing forms and nurtured the next generation of chefs through resources and mentorship. To learn more, visit sanpellegrino.com.
I'm Massimo Bottura.
This is Amanda Cohen.
This is David Kinch.
This is Mike Anthony.
This is Hooni Kim.
This is Amanda Freitag.
This is Richard Blaze.
This is Paul Kahn.
This is Curtis Stone.
This is Stephen Harris.
This is Missy Robbins. And you're listening to Andrew Talks to Chefs.
I mean, the reason I left Paris was, I think, for most part for that reason, because I remember talking to journalists and having interviews, and they were just not getting why I would say stuff like that. They felt like I was too ambitious for a woman, too ambitious for a young person in general. And I think everybody should embrace ambition. I think if more people believed in themselves, then everybody would do so much more.
That is the voice of Alexia Duchêne of Le Chêne restaurant in New York City. Alexia is our guest today on Andrew Talks to Chefs.
It's gonna take a prolonged arrangement of the senses to make some sense of this.
Hey everybody, welcome to the show. This is Andrew Talks to Chefs. I am your host, Andrew Friedman, and our guest today is Alexia Duchêne. Alexia is the chef and an owner of Le Chêne restaurant in the West Village of New York City. It's a restaurant that I like quite a bit. I've only been there once, and it was very recent. The restaurant's also only been open for about 8 months at this point. I am coming to you today from my apartment in Brooklyn, New York, and I'm dressed the way I am. You can't see this if you're only listening to the show, but I'm a little dressed down today. I usually do try to wear something nice for the show, but we are in the middle. Wow, I just saw a giant hunk of snow fall by my window. I guess it just came off our rooftop. We're in the middle of a blizzard. I'm looking out my window. The snow is still, as I record this, at around 1 o'clock on Monday, Feb 23. The snow is still blowing horizontally. I've been home now for about 24 hours. My wife, Caitlin, got stuck in Los Angeles on a work trip, and it's just been me and my dog. If I had just had a fireplace, it would have been great. But I love a blizzard. I'm sorry it got so bad. They actually, as you may have heard, closed the roads in the New York City area last night. There was no one allowed on the roads to drive. So I've just been hunkered down, doing work, watching movies, working on the pod, writing some books, and that's about it. I am going to keep this intro a little short today because I do just want to get right to the interview, and I don't really have a critical mass of dining adventures to share, so I'm going to save my next possibly compromised critic posting for our next episode. And I'm also going to keep our sponsor mentions short because the intro's short and I don't want it to be more than 50% sponsor reads. So I am just going to say, first of all, I'm drinking this as I talk to you. San Pellegrino Sparkling Natural Mineral Water, right? You know the message I usually read. It's been around for more than 125 years. It is a wonderful complement to any form of fine dining. And it is also a huge supporter of the industry and of specifically the idea of mentorship. And I am also going to mention, look, the hat. I'm wearing my Mise cap today. And Mise, of course, is the recipe operating system for culinary professionals. It is a place where you can warehouse and manipulate all of your recipes, and also is a wonderful teaching tool that enables you to incorporate videos and photographs that can teach your team how to prepare your dishes in your restaurant or restaurants. It's especially great for multi-unit or multi-concept groups. And if you go to getmeez.com/Andrew, that's GETMEEZ.com/Andrew, you can check it out for yourself. I do highly recommend it to everybody out there as a wonderful tool for efficiency. And again, as I say, and for teaching. And that link is in the episode description for today's show at andrewtalkstochefs.com or wherever you listen to your podcast. So I am going to get right to the introduction today of Alexia Duchêne. Alexia is originally from Paris, France. She is somebody whose career I actually had been kind of well aware of. She appeared on Top Chef in Europe when she was still very young. She has worked in Paris, including at some classic French restaurants, and also at Frenchie in London. And I didn't really know until I was researching Alexia, but kind of interesting. Although she grew up in Paris and speaks with a French accent, she by no means consider herself strictly French. In fact, I see on her social media that she describes herself as a French/British chef because one of her parents was actually from England, and she, as I say, went to work in London for a time. She is in New York City. She opened a restaurant, as I say, by the name of Chêne, and that is in the West Village. I went along with our cinematographer, Michael Thelian, several weeks ago, and we had a wonderful dinner. Alexia is in the kitchen, of course. Ronan, her husband and business partner, is running the front of the house. And it's a very charming restaurant. It feels very timelessly West Village of New York City. That's something I would also say of a restaurant that I'll be talking about when I do run my next possibly compromised critic segment. That was very true of Brian Bartolow's new restaurant, Bartolo, which I ate at last week. I love restaurants that evoke old West Village, New York City. This one certainly does that, but also the staff in the dining room is largely French. The room is very classic, as I say. And as I say in the interview, it's a restaurant where you could be forgiven for forgetting for a moment. Are you in New York City? Are you in London? Are you in Paris? It feels like you could be in any one of those places. The service is very warm and very attentive. And the food is, at first blush, very classically French. But when you get into it, and I won't spoil anything in this intro, you realize that Alexia has actually imbued many of these dishes that look very traditional with her own personality, with her own palate, with her own influences that kind of weave through her childhood and her cooking career. As I say, I won't spoil any of that because we get into it in the conversation. So I think I'm going to leave it there on this snowy day and get right to it. So here you go. This is my conversation with Alexia Duchêne. Here you go. Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming to Brooklyn. We're still suffering the effects of the blizzard. It's still snow banked up all over the city. So thank you for doing that. There's a lot of things I want to talk to you about. The first one, which is out of chronological order, is coming to New York. So I came to New York as soon as I could when I was 17, but I grew up in Florida.
Yeah, pretty close.
Well,
Very
but I
sweet.
mean, to me, it was I was like, I got to get to New York. I want to be in New York City. There are certain places when people come to New York or even to the United States, I'm like, I personally am confused, right? One of those places is California, which I just think is the most beautiful. I just was there last week. It was so wonderful. Another place is Paris. I'm always like, how can you leave Paris? It seems so crazy to me. But I didn't grow up in Paris as you did. So can you just, before we talk about anything else, you've been here now for quite a few years, just what was the attraction of New York and what was it that made you want to live here?
When I was younger, both my godparents were living between Paris, New York, Switzerland, and they would always talk about New York and about their life here and how it was dynamic. And like, I remember I was obsessed with watching movies that were only based in New York when I was like 8 years old. And they just would bring back like Yankees like hats, jerseys, and I would wear that to school. And I felt like I belonged to a place where I've never been.
Mm-hmm.
And they invited me a summer when I was 17. We did like a whole trip with my parents and my sister. I spent 2.5 months in New York. And I actually found a stage. I was working for a month at La Grenouille.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just, for me, that was magical. I remember arriving to the airport, being like super late and seeing the skyline and just feeling like I was exactly where I should be.
Mm-hmm.
And it sounds very cliche, and I think like a lot of people that, move to New York say these things, but it does feel like there was this energy that I was missing in Paris, and this drive and this just want for more. And working at La Grenouille felt such a different thing from what I've seen in France. The food was not better, but I felt like the clientele was more dynamic, more curious, more joyful. And for me, as a chef, I would rather be in a place that maybe doesn't have as much, abundance of ingredients like you have in Paris, but has this very dynamic and fun diners that I think at the end of the day brings more joy as a chef than great ingredients.
I totally relate to everything you just said. I'm curious to know with Le Grenouille, I mean, that is for people who don't know, that is one of the old New York City classic French restaurants. It's uptown.
Yep.
What was it like coming from your background, coming actually from France to, a New Yorker would say, that's a classic French restaurant. Did you experience that way, or what were the differences you saw? I know the service is you just alluded to it, because of the customers here, because you're in New York, because we have things like this crazy thing called pre-theater. There's a whole different pace to a dining room. I understand that. But in the kitchen, how did you experience the food when you came over here and started interacting with what most New Yorkers would think of as classic French?
I mean, there are a lot of things that surprised me. First of all, like they were making sole meunière. So for those who don't know, it's the classic fish, flat fish, that we just cook in brown butter and we finish with a bit of lemon. Very rich, deep, decadent dish. And at La Grenouille, because they were doing so many covers, they didn't really have time to kind of put it in a pan and roast it. They would just put like paprika and put it on the salamander, and that would give this very like, golden crust look.
Yeah.
And that was fascinating to me. I was like, okay, like they're not even trying to do it the way it should be done.
They're trying to keep up.
But at the end of the day, the customers are happy.
Yeah.
And that's the first time I realized that doing something traditional is not always what you should do. And bottom line is always the customer. If they're happy with what you're serving and they see value, then good for you, in a way.
Mm-hmm.
And what they were serving and what they were delivering was way more than food. It was just a space that felt magical, and just you felt like you were stepping into a different era of time, and they did that very well for a very long time.
You alluded a minute ago to your godparents, and to their sort of worldliness, right? You yourself, one of your parents is French.
Yep.
Your father, your mom is from England.
Yes.
And there's beyond, if you go back generations, I've listened to some other conversations that you've done. There's a lot of different influences culturally in your bloodline and in your family. I'm curious to know, growing up, did you identify strictly as French growing up, or did you feel yourself to have sort of more of a relationship with more of the world, even like you hadn't been to New York yet, but you'd heard about New York a lot, right? You did go and spend some time in the UK at one point. Just how did you think of yourself in terms of a nationality or in terms of a limitation?
Growing up, I hated being French because I just felt like it wasn't me. I learned English before learning French. Sundays we're mostly eating Middle Eastern food or Greek food. We're not really connected to the French root that much, except when we were going to see my grandparents in Normandy. But other than that, most like celebrations were around different kinds of cuisine, and therefore I didn't feel very connected. Even with my friends, when I was eating at their houses, it was really like bland French food that wasn't very good. And when they were coming to my house, we were having, you know, like a lot of like pasta. My mother was making fresh pesto. We were eating vine leaves, just a bunch of different things that felt so normal to me. And I think I felt more French with time, especially being in New York now. I feel like I've never felt so proud to be French, and I embrace French food more and more, and I kind of dive into recipes that I've never had as a child, just because it feels like I'm being a bit more connected to my past. But I think I was always more interested in all these other cultures that surround me: Egypt, Greece. Even my granddad, he was Italian Syrian. I think a lot of people think of me as just a French chef, but I think my mother always says like she's a citizen of the world, and I feel the same way.
Interesting. I mean, it is funny that you say everything you just said, because I don't know if you meet a lot of people, but when I came to dinner, I had the steak tartare.
Yeah.
And I was like, what gives that? What is the, and it was harissa.
Yep.
Right? That makes, now I understand that that's not a big leap for you to take, right? Given some of the influences that flowed through your childhood table, right?
Yep.
So that makes perfect sense to me, right? I mean, this is an accurate
Exactly. Yeah.
understanding of everything you're saying.
Mm.
Yeah. So, was there a moment, and we'll eventually become chronological as we talk, but just following this thread, was there a moment when you, because as you said, I think some of what you just said might be surprising to people, right? Because
Yeah.
you have this restaurant, it has a French name, you're from France, the food there is French. Overwhelmingly, I don't know if this is deliberate, I have to think I mean, it just adds, for me, it added so much to the effect. But overwhelmingly, your dining room staff is French, at least when I was there.
Yeah. A lot
which-
of them are French. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, they all speak perfect English, but to me, it added to the whole vibe. You know, this feeling of where am I right now? Am I in New York? Am I in Paris? You know,
But we didn't even plan it that way. We never thought we would have French front of house. To be honest, I think when we opened, we really wanted more Americans because we love this efficiency that Americans have, this knowledge, this passion for learning that maybe French people don't have as much. They're a bit more, you know, we see as we go. We'll talk about the menu without really tasting it, and we know how to spiel it because it's ingrained in us. So it's a very different way of seeing things. But at the end of the day, that's what we have, and I think this is also what sets us apart because we're a French restaurant in New York that have actual French people in front of house and the kitchen, and it does bring more Frenchness. For sure.
Yeah, and at least the one time I was in the dining room, customers.
Yeah.
I heard some French being spoken when I
Yeah.
was there, which again, just to me, it's so funny, the relationship. I mean, you're much younger than I am, but the relationship that exists now between New York and Paris, or even between, I mean, outside the food world, things are a little crazy right now. We won't get into that. But, you know, historically, the relationship, even coming from a worldly city like New York, you would go to Paris, you'd feel very self-conscious, and I have to say, you maybe didn't get treated all that well. Even if you spoke French, a lot of times people would talk back to you in English, you know, which I always found very hostile.
Yeah.
But today, it's totally different. You know, you go to restaurants there, a lot of them, like I remember going to Le Chateaubriand a few years ago when I was talking to our server, they change the menu every day. And to work there, you have to be able to present it in French and English, a daily changing menu, right? This would be unimaginable 30, 40 years ago, right? It is an amazing effect, I think, when you go to that dining room, because you do have this feeling that you're just sort of, you could be, there's 3 or 4 cities you could conceivably be in.
Yeah.
When you walked out the door. Does that make sense to you when I say that?
And I think that's what we wanted. We want people to feel like they're traveling. They're not in New York. They could be in London. They could be in Paris. Like, that's what we want, because I think escapism is fundamental into, any good restaurant.
Mm-hmm. So, okay, now let's go all the way back. I would love to get your story. First of all, so you did grow up in Paris. And, it's so interesting because I've seen you interviewed, and I met you in the restaurant. You and I were just talking for a few minutes now. You seem like such a centered person. I saw you in the restaurant. You seem super professional. Like you just exude seriousness and professionalness. But you, as a kid, you were not a great student.
No, I mean, I wasn't a bad student, but I was pretty average. Just because I wasn't passionate about any topic, that I'm someone that likes concrete things, and I didn't understand what math, history, or any of these subjects would bring to me in life. And it's true that when I went to cooking school, it felt very straightforward. You cook a dish, it's well cooked, you give it to a customer, they enjoy it, they pay for it, that's the end. And I kind of like this. I kind of love repetition. I love just the fact that every night is different.
Mm-hmm.
You can have a bad day, you can have a terrible service that feels like the worst day of your life, but tomorrow is a new day. These customers that came and had a bad experience one day, tomorrow they won't be here. So you have a chance to prove yourself again.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, that's just joy, to prove to myself, to prove to my team, to the guests that trust us, that we're good enough. Every single day is extremely gratifying.
Mm-hmm. You went to, if I understand it correctly, you went to what we would call here in the United States a vocational high school, right?
Exactly.
Where part of the day you were learning cooking, and then part of the day there was academics.
Yeah.
And cooking is, in that situation, cooking is treated, at most like a craft, right? It's treated like this is a trade that you're going to be able to use to make a living, right? You don't have the romance of, you're not at Le Cordon Bleu, right?
No.
You're not at even like the Culinary Institute of America. You're there to learn a trade that you'll be able to make a living at. Accurate?
Exactly, yeah. And all of the other subjects that are not cooking kind of have a connection to cooking. So if we learn history, it's going to be history of food. Everything is related because they do not want to teach you anything that you will not use in your craft.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that sounds like it was perfect for you.
And for me, it was a dream. But for my parents, it was kind of scary because they knew that this would put me in a box that was hard to get out of.
Yeah, I've heard you talk about this, that number one, because you had moved on from a more traditional liberal arts education, you had limited, you would kind of it was sort of a last, okay, this is it. This has to work, because where do I go if this doesn't work, right?
Yeah, and also, like, I was 15. I think taking that decision so young is extremely scary for parents, because I was so innocent to the world that I had no idea the consequences that it could lead to.
Mm-hmm.
So I made this decision completely foolishly. And my parents were quite concerned that if I wasn't good at cooking, or if it wasn't something that I appreciated, then what do I do? Because it is a very, very narrow educational curriculum.
Mm-hmm. So you, you've talked about at some point I guess what we would call externships. I don't know if would we call them apprenticeships when you were in school?
Stage.
Stage.
Yeah.
So that they weren't, at least with where your school was concerned, not only wasn't the education romanticized, but they just put you in what we would politely call average at best kitchens, kitchens, bad restaurants.
Yeah.
And you asked to be assigned or to go to a Michelin-starred restaurant.
Yep.
Here's what I'm curious about. What was there a moment that you can point to, and maybe there's not, but it seems to me at some point you turned a corner. I'm assuming the education was you were learning French cuisine.
Yeah.
I'm assuming that wasn't what you grew up necessarily eating, right? Except on the weekends.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, I want to work in a Michelin-starred restaurant. That to me signifies a real sea change in relationship to the work, to this profession. Was it a gradual thing, or was there a moment where you sort of saw, where kind of a light went on for you when you kind of saw that this was something you could actually be, not just make a living at, but have a passion for?
I think that even when I was very, very young, everything I dreamt of was always to be the best. I kind of believe in myself in that way. I don't put any limit to my capabilities. And even before entering cooking school, I was obsessed with Jean-Georges, Alain Ducasse, and these chefs that for me have crafted a path for other chefs to really be redefining what French food is. And I know it sounds kind of weird, but it's true that for me that there was no possibility that that was not something that could be for me. So I always thought of myself as, a possibility of being in the top 1% of chefs, even before I started cooking, even when I entered the curriculum. Because for me, if I do something, it is to be important in my career. Even though my school teachers would not say that about me because they didn't see that part of me, but also they didn't get a chance to see my value. I think a lot of people, they judge people without actually being interested in them. And in school, I had a wonderful cooking teacher that I still talk to called Bernard. And he saw something in me. I think he saw my seriousness and my eagerness to learn, and he pushed me to do cooking competitions and to really teach me things that he was not teaching to others that he saw didn't care as much. So
Well, it's interesting you mentioned cooking competitions, because obviously that comes up again later in your still young career. But it's maybe an interesting way of answering the question, because I was going to say, you talked about being in the top 1%. Do you consider yourself competitive? Do you look at that as a competitive thing, or is that just you take pride in what you do?
I think, and I talk about this a lot with my mother because I think we're very much the same way. I think I'm competitive, but I think I know my worth so much that when it comes to beating the other, I don't really need that to know I am the better opponent. And I'm taking the example of Top Chef when I was doing it, but it's true that I love the competition, but really when it came down to winning or not, it didn't matter to me. Like, I already won in my head, and it didn't change my value that I didn't win. I don't regret it, or I don't think I should have done things differently. I was 22, and I was against people that had way more experience than I did, but I did feel that I had something more. Maybe not more skills, maybe not more experience, but I think I had a better understanding of what people want in cooking at the end of the day. And it doesn't matter, like, every chef is different. Everybody has strengths and weaknesses, and everybody forges their own path. But it's true that I feel I am competitive, but not to the point where I need to beat someone to prove a point. Yeah.
This is a bit of a leap I'm going to take. Please tell me if I'm off totally wrong. It seems to me it's not just, like you talked about the different, when you came and worked at Le Grenouille, right? And the difference in just the whole vibe of a New York restaurant. I feel like you were sort of born to be a New Yorker. It seems like to me you're describing a sort of ambition that that to me it's very New York in character. I don't think it's and this maybe isn't for me to say. Maybe you know what I'm about to say, but I've had so many people tell me, actually from both countries that you are from genetically, right? You're not supposed to get too big ahead. You're not supposed to talk too openly about wanting to be the best. That people feel like you're getting a little ahead of yourself or a little too big-headed. Is that an accurate statement?
For sure. I
Do you
think,
feel like everything you just described about yourself fit in better?
yeah.
Like naturally, it's nothing unusual. It's how you're
Yeah.
supposed to be here in New York. Does that resonate with you?
I mean, the reason I left Paris was, I think, for most part for that reason, because I remember talking to journalists and having interviews, and they were just not getting why I would say stuff like that. They felt like I was too ambitious for a woman, too ambitious for a young person in general, and I think everybody should embrace ambition. I think if more people believed in themselves, then everybody would do so much more. I really do believe that, and sometimes I try to teach that to my team because it's so important to have that belief in yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's go through some of your early jobs. First of all, where do you end up getting the Michelin stage that you wanted?
I went to a small hotel, Rue de la Paix, close to the Ritz, called Le Céladon. Very small, 1 Michelin star. We're doing like 30 covers, very old school. Tiny kitchen, I think we're 6 or 7 for a Michelin star in France. It's quite small.
Mm-hmm.
But it was just super interesting. I saw my first squab, and I remember buying squab through them to train on the weekend and to make some for my parents. It was just an eye-opener in terms of quality of ingredients,
Mm-hmm.
professionalism, and just overall this goal to reach for something better.
Mm-hmm. So that was a confirmation that you had selected a good path for yourself.
Exactly. I loved it. I think it wasn't high enough for me. I think I did feel like, okay, what's more? What's even more ambitious? What's even more challenging? I didn't feel like it was super challenging.
Mm-hmm.
And therefore, for the next stages, my neighbor that was living just above us was a 2 Michelin star chef. And he was he was a 3 Michelin star chef, and he told me to go see this 2 Michelin star chef that his daughter and I went to school together. So I knocked at his door and I asked for a stage at Le Taïwan.
Oh,
extremely
sure, yeah.
classic. And that for me felt more aligned with what I wanted to build as a career. This very prestigious, timeless, classic French, where I could learn all the basics that for me are fundamental at the moment in my cuisine.
That's so interesting to me because that to me, I mean, when you say that represented more something that you'd like to build, I mean, to me, that means something that has a legacy, something that might outlive you
Yeah.
at some point.
I think
Accurate?
that's the greatest goal. I don't think of restaurants as trendy. I mean, at least not what I want to build. I really hope that one day I build something that outlives me. I think that would be the greatest honor of my life. Something also that's not defined by me. That if, another chef takes over, it still has the same impact.
Mm-hmm. I totally get that. I love all of that. We're going to take a quick break, and then we'll come back and talk about more recent things in your life. We'll be right back. This episode of Andrew Talks to Chefs was filmed at the iconic Gage and Toner restaurant in beautiful downtown Brooklyn. Situated for more than 125 years just across the Brooklyn Bridge from Manhattan and just steps from several major subway lines, Gage and Toner mingles a transporting landmark setting with contemporary standards of food and hospitality. Gage and Toner's current chapter began in 2021 when the restaurant was reopened by a trio of successful Brooklyn restaurateurs following a lovingly performed restoration. In addition to the expansive chandelier downstairs dining room, the second floor is home to the Sunken Harbor Club, Gage and Toner's very own tropical cocktail bar, and to 2 conjoined private spaces decorated to resemble a Victorian townhome. We film in one of those. Whether for any occasion dining, a drink or bite at the walk-and-only bar, or a private event, Gage and Toner looks forward to hosting you. For more information and or to reserve your table today, visit the link in our episode description for today's show at andrewtalkstochefs.com or wherever you get your podcasts. Okay, so can we talk about Frenchie for a minute?
Yeah.
Again, so interesting to me given your personal background. And for people who don't know, Frenchie was a restaurant that originated in Paris, and then they opened in London. You went to work there, which again, given your personal family makeup, right, that's sort of interesting to me. What drew you to that restaurant, and what was that experience like for you, and what was it like being in the UK?
I actually was studying when I applied. I was doing an associate degree in business hospitality, and I thought it was quite boring because it was everything but hospitality. It was numbers. It was very not concrete things. I mean, at least to me.
Was that to make your parents happy?
Yeah, it was just to make sure that I could have a way out. But you know,
Right.
it wasn't like a great thing. It was kind of a middle degree that I could do something else after, and it just didn't feel like relevant to me at the moment. And my parents told me that I was not allowed to quit if I didn't find a job. I went to Frenchie maybe twice before with some friends that were like colleagues with whom I was working at Taiwan. And I just fell in love with this modern way of cooking, this traditional, but also very ingredient focused. Everything was super seasonal and a bit the opposite of Taiwan because, you know, at Taiwan, you have mangoes all year round. If someone wants an asparagus in winter, they will have that because you cannot say no. So it was completely the opposite of what I've seen in the past. And I saw on Facebook, because I was following Greg, Greg the owner, that they were looking for line cooks for the opening in London. And I messaged him on Facebook. And he replied, can you come tomorrow for an interview? And I was like, how am I going to do this? And I said yes. And we set a time. And I actually took a night bus from Paris to London, like a 9-hour bus ride. I arrived at 6 in the morning. I had my interview at 10. I arrived at 10 to 10, and I finished the interview at like 2 to 10. It lasted like 8 minutes. And I called my parents when it ended, and my mother was like, you have to hang up because your interview is going to start. I was like, it's already over. And she said, what? And I didn't sit down. I was at the pass talking to him. He was like, okay, I'm looking for someone. I don't care about your CV. Are you ready to start working? Do you have a bit of pastry knowledge? Yes, no. And can you start next week? So I go back to Paris. I pack my bags. I find an apartment. And I moved to London a week later. And that for me was so thrilling. I loved how fast opportunities could come in this world. And I started working at Frenchie. I was 19. He put me as a pastry chef. We didn't really have a pastry chef, but we had recipes, and I was just executing them. And it was the hardest job because it was a crazy opening, extremely busy. Everybody was going to Frenchie. It was such a hot restaurant when I was in London. And we're doing 130 covers a night. We're doing pre-theater, late seatings also. It was just a crazy, crazy experience. But also, I think it might be the experience that shaped me the most into what I'm doing today. Just because it was the perfect blend of French food, but also international, but also ultra seasonal, very small team, which means that everybody knows each other, everybody can do everything. And I just love this way of managing, and I think that's what I'm trying to do today at Le Chêne.
Was that one of the moments that you would point to? It's just so interesting to me to hear you talk about how growing up, you know, French food wasn't what you subsisted on, right? But I mean, what you do now, I mean, you're serving French food.
Yeah.
It has your style, right? Was Frenchie one of the forces that helped kind of bring you around to embracing, not that you hated it or
No,
anything,
yeah.
but was that one of the experiences that kind of helped you see, oh, this is how I might
Yep.
go about doing this?
Oh, for sure. And also Greg has kind of the same thing, you know, he traveled a lot to New York. He was, I think, in Spain or something. So he's seen a lot of different things. And what I still love about his approach of food is just how free he is. You know, it's French, and he would do like pasta, and he would also do foie gras with eel and beetroot, and he would do so many different things that were not French, and he didn't care. And that's when I thought that French food doesn't need to be so classic. It could also be whatever you want it to be. He would come back from a trip to Morocco and we're like, okay, let's do a condiment with dates to put with chicken. And I was like, that's amazing. And he didn't feel like he was obliged to follow a certain guidebook to be a good chef.
Mm-hmm. So can we talk about Top Chef? We don't have to talk about
Yeah.
it for too long. They found you on Facebook. Is that accurate?
Yeah.
So can you just we can do it very broad strokes, right? But do you you must remember first hearing from them? Was it immediately something you were interested in, or was it something that you thought this is too good an opportunity to pass up? I mean, you know, I was around when Top Chef was brand new, right? And it seemed like, is that going to work? Now the American one's been going for, quarter of a century.
Yeah.
But what's your generation's relationship to that show like, and how tough a decision was it to even pursue being considered?
I mean, Top Chef was not necessarily something I watched as a younger chef. Not because I wasn't interested, but I was living with my parents. My parents were not really interested in the show, so we were not watching it. If sometimes we would click on the channel and watch it for 30 minutes, that would be like the end of it, basically. So I wasn't really accustomed to the show or like the stars of the show and stuff like that. I obviously knew about it, but they contacted me the first time. I think I was 17 or 18. I was extremely young, and it was, for me, completely unimaginable to do that show because I felt so unprepared and, to be honest, quite disinterested at that time. And then they contacted me twice after that. The second time, still, I didn't feel like it was the right time. And the third time, they contacted me when I was a sous chef at Passerini in Paris. And for the first time in my life, I felt like I could do it. And Passerini was great, but I didn't feel like I knew what was next. I was a sous chef of a great place in Paris, but I really didn't see where I was going to go from there. And so Top Chef came at a moment where it was just a great opportunity for me to kind of like cut the string and move on to something different. And so I did the casting. So we all cook in a kitchen, which was also my old high school.
Oh,
so
really?
I went back to my high
How
school.
strange is that?
Yeah, it's because it's one of the biggest
Sure.
culinary high schools. So all the competitions to select the candidates were there.
Sure.
So I would go back. I knew all the kitchens. I knew this place like my back pocket. So it was also very convenient for me. And we had to do 2 dishes. And they select you on the dish, obviously, but also the way you communicate, if you're a likable person or a really unlikable person that they can,
Make you the villain?
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, even though they say they don't, I mean, when you see the thing, you know, like
Yeah.
they need a
There have
certain
to be
time.
one or two jerks.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I filmed the show. It lasts 2 months if you go until the semifinal, which I did. And it was just such an amazing experience. I think a lot of people like to trash TV, but I loved it. First of all, because before cooking, my one true passion was more like acting. So I just loved the theatrical of it. You're cooking, you're looking at the camera, you're talking, you're explaining. And it's something that is extremely enjoyable for me.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's great to give some insight to our world to people that have no idea how a kitchen works. And I just also love the opportunity to meet chefs that I would never meet, if I wasn't on the show.
Sure.
So I got to interact with Yannick Aleno, with Alain Ducasse, with whom I created a relationship from the show, and it's just for me was really the highlight of my young career, and I'm eternally grateful for the show, even though there are perks and there's obviously things that are not great from the show, but you have to take something for everything, and I take that. Yeah.
So you were very young when you did that show.
22, yeah.
Yeah. And all of a sudden, and to some extent, you're a recognizable person. Do you feel like you were equipped to handle that when it happened? Were you grounded enough at age 22 to not let that go to your head or become a negative thing for you?
I think I was extremely well surrounded. My parents, my sister, my friends. I feel like I had a really good base of people that really wanted good things for me.
Mm-hmm.
But I do think that things that I did wrong was maybe my first head chef role after Top Chef, thinking that all of the things that are not cooking are more important than cooking. So all the interviews, the photos, the articles, everything that promotes a restaurant is more important than what we're actually doing. And I was completely wrong, because you can have great articles, but if you're not in the kitchen, if you're not building a culture in the kitchen, if you're not showing your team the way, then you're not building anything. It's just fake, and the smallest inconvenience could put you down. So we separated from that restaurant because of COVID. But to be fair, I don't think even without COVID that would have lasted very long, just because I don't think I was equipped to put in the work that needs to be put.
Mm-hmm.
And so yeah, I think that would be the only thing that I wasn't really prepared for. It was just like the level of work you need to do, even though you're recognizable and people come for you.
Mm-hmm.
The food is the only thing that talks at the end of the day, and you could be a great chef, and I think we did great food at the time, but I don't think there was this level of consistency that I now realize is fundamental for a restaurant.
But I'm understanding everything you're saying, but I just have to ask, it is though a little bit of a fine line, right? Because I mean, I hear from so many chefs that the public has become so fickle. They don't have the loyalty they used to have to a restaurant, right? There's all these restaurants in New York that have been around for like 40 years now, right? Like Gramercy Tavern and Union Square Cafe. I talk to younger people who are opening now. They have no expectation that they could possibly last that long, and largely because they think the public just doesn't keep coming back long enough. So my only question isn't that stuff is important to some extent, right? Because once you get over the newness of an opening, don't you have to do some of that to keep, or do you feel like just running a terrific restaurant will sustain your business?
I mean, I think we live in a world where you cannot have one and not the other. I think that promoting your restaurant is essential. I think everybody knows that. Being on social media, posting about your restaurant is really crucial. But I do think that restaurants that focus too much on this and not enough on what is actually getting out of the kitchen or the guest experience are missing the most important part of a restaurant. I think we've only been open for 8 months. We have people that have been here 14 times.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a lot. These are people that could come back forever if you treat them right every single time.
Right.
At the end of the day, it takes roughly 3 to 4 good meals to have people trust you. It's not one good meal that people are going to trust you. So it takes 3 or 4 good experiences for people to feel like they might be a regular. And I feel like a lot of people don't realize that. It's not because they had one great meal that they feel like they want to come back again.
I love what you. Is that your own bit of wisdom, or did
No,
somebody
no,
convey that?
no.
to you?
I read a lot of different.
You
data.
read that.
Yeah, yeah,
That
yeah,
is such. I've never heard that put that way. I think that's so wise. I think that is so wise. So, okay, in the back of your mind, I guess, through these years, is New York. You're thinking
yeah. I
maybe
mean,
I'd like to go over there sometime. How does it finally come to be?
well, after Top Chef, I felt like after the restaurant experience that I had, that wasn't very positive. I took a lot of time to reflect and to think of, okay, what does it mean to be a chef? I didn't feel like I really wanted to go back to restaurants. I felt like I was a bit burned out from this experience and not ready. I felt like I was too young, too immature. Even though I think I'm pretty mature in a lot of ways, I did feel like work-wise, to lead a team, I was not mature enough to really give a team what they need to succeed. And so I was doing a lot of collaborations. I was working with brands, doing a lot of things that were fun. And I traveled a lot. And I had my own TV show in France. And a lot of things that were really a good distraction for a few years, but felt at one point where, what's the point? Why am I promoting things when I don't have any product? It just felt very empty.
Mm-hmm.
And it's true that I was in Paris. People were offering me positions in Paris. You could do this, you could open this with me. And it really didn't feel like it was, interesting. And I had the guys from Fulgurance in Paris that opened something in Greenpoint. They contacted me. They were like, we just opened. Do you want to be our second or third resident chef?
Can I interrupt for just one second? For people who don't know, that project that you just alluded to, I have to say, it's funny, because when I was researching you, I was like, there was a moment where my experience in Paris, I got an intersection of your history. I was eating dinner at Passerini
Wow.
3 years ago, and the person I was with knows Hugo from Fulgurance, and Hugo walks by.
Yeah.
So I met all these people who were part of your life, right? But that is Fulgurance is we would call it a residency restaurant. Chefs come for different lengths of time. Sometimes it's just for one night, but usually they come for
2 months.
2-3 months. And as you say, the original was in Paris, and now there is one. Oh, I guess they're moving. It's closed
They
now.
just closed.
They're doing something new.
Yeah.
They've been a little coy about it on social media. Anyway, but there was a Greenpoint version of this.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So they asked me to come for 2 months. So I came for January, February for 4 years, 4 years ago. And it was just so, my husband, who was my boyfriend at the time, I asked him, do you want to come with me? Let's experience New York. And he was a photographer at the time, and he kind of left all his projects back and kind of jumped in this project with me. And we said that we would see if we like New York together, because it's one thing that I love New York, but we're a team and we have to choose our next moves together. So we moved to Greenpoint for 2 months, and I cooked there, and I just loved everything about New York food scene and cooking my own food, the ingredients, going to the farmer's market. I felt also that, in a way, because of the farmer's market, people were extremely connected to their suppliers. In France, it's not really that way. We have great ingredients, but it's also because we have great platforms that sources great ingredients. But we don't necessarily go to a market, even though people think of Paris that way. But there are more chefs going to the market in New York than there are chefs going to the market in Paris. That is a fact. And I just felt this energy when you were going to the market that was extremely thrilling. And so yeah, I cooked for 2 months. I loved it. People seemed to really like my food. And I just was desperate for someone to recognize, what I was doing and be interested in opening something. And it didn't really happen. I mean, there was someone that we were talking about building a project. It didn't really work out. And there is this woman called Wendy Lin in Paris.
Oh, I know Wendy from when she was here.
Yeah,
she used to work for Terrence Brennan here in New York. Sure.
And she does those food tours for Americans in Paris, and she's very well connected. She posts on Instagram, restaurant in Brooklyn looking for a head chef, opening spring or something. And we were, I think, in October at that time. And I replied to her instantly, and I was like, listen, I'm interested. Can you connect? She connects me with 2 women, Kip and Hallie, that were opening Margot.
Mm-hmm. Which is about a 10, 12-minute walk
Yeah.
from where we're sitting right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we do a FaceTime. We feel like we're connecting. They asked me to come to New York for a tasting. So I come to New York for 3 days. I cook roughly 6 or 7 dishes. We spend the whole day in the kitchen together. We have fun. I feel like we're kind of similar in a lot of ways. And even though we don't really have the same background and I feel maybe the same vision, I feel like we have the same energy that could work well.
Mm-hmm.
And they asked me to move to New York to pursue this project. So I moved to New York in February, and the restaurant opened in May. And yeah, after a month and a half, it didn't really work out. I feel like I don't want to say Brooklyn was to this, to that, or the neighborhood was that, because at the end of the day, I think when you're a destination restaurant, you can do anything anywhere. But to be a destination restaurant, everybody has to be on the same page.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt like they were more interested in doing a very neighborhood restaurant that really served the community. And I was maybe more interested at that time to make a name for myself and to do something that felt relevant enough for people to take the train and come to Brooklyn and try something different.
Mm-hmm. I will just say, in fact, when your PR folks reached out to me, I said, oh yeah, I definitely want to have her on. I said I had a reservation at Margot to try
That's
your
crazy.
food, and when the Saturday came along, it was the
Yeah.
week that you left the restaurant. And I got there and I was like, what? Wait, what happened? They're very nice people, and I like that restaurant. I just want to ask this, because I'm sure that was an awkward situation,
Yeah.
and you're talking about it in a very polite way, which is great. Because most of our audience is industry. We have a lot of young cooks who listen. Was there a lesson that you took out of that experience that you would offer up to younger people about new partnerships? Not in a critical way, but was there something that you would do differently if you were to do something like that again?
I think you know in your gut if it's a good partnership, and I think don't ignore the signs. If someone is saying they want to put a chicken and a burger on the menu, don't think that these things will change. I think as an ambitious chef, you kind of are like, yeah, no worries, we'll make it work. I'm gonna bring such good food that they're gonna forget about their idea. But at the end of the day, everybody has a different vision of hospitality, and there's no right or wrong. There's nothing better than the other. It's really about what you're delivering, and that's it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of young chefs are so eager to open because it is so hard to find funds. It is so hard to have something of your own that we all kind of jump into whatever is offered to us because we just want to speak with our own voice. But being in a bad partnership only suppresses your voice and only slows down the process of actually doing something that is yours.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. Okay, well, it took some time, but this now leads us to eventually to Le Chêne, to your current restaurant. As you say, you've been open less than a year.
Mm-hmm.
You originally, first of all, I didn't realize this till we were talking just now. So you got your husband into this.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he's in for the long run now. He looks, I never would, I did not assume that, because when we came to the restaurant, he seems like he was born to be doing this. He's so good at the hospitality piece.
I think he's always been amazing at it. And even when he was a photographer, I think what made him such a good photographer was really honestly not his photos, even though they were pretty good. It was more his love for people, the way he connected with his clients that made people want to work with him again.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's great at understanding people, knowing what they want, and delivering that. And his parents are winemakers in Bordeaux, so he's always been extremely connected to the wine world, and just has a love of food, ingredients. His granddad used to have a garden, so he would have his own vegetables. And so we have a very different upbringing, but I think what connects us is really the love of hospitality, this love for people and wanting to create memories for people. Yeah.
Yeah, it's great. So you originally, is this correct? You're in the West Village.
Yeah.
You originally wanted to be on the Upper East Side. Is that accurate?
Yep.
And what, you couldn't find the right space, or you decided, changed your mind about where you, because to me, I feel like you're in exactly, like, I feel like you're right where you should be.
We're very happy.
And I'm very happy for you
Yeah.
that you're not, nothing against my friends on the Upper East Side.
No.
But yeah, I think I have to imagine you're happier where you are than you would be up there.
Yeah.
But what happened? Was it a real estate thing? Did you have a change of heart after living here for a while? How'd you end up geographically where you are?
The Upper East Side was a goal for multiple reasons. First of all, just because that's where my family, my godparents were when I visited them. It's a neighborhood I know very well. It's also a neighborhood that felt reassuring because a French restaurant on the Upper East Side, we know it's a concept that people will like.
Mm-hmm.
Ronan at the time was working for Café Boulu. So there was also an understanding of the clientele. We didn't really know anything about downtown New York. It felt a bit scary. It did feel very much like we would get a clientele that is a bit more focused on Instagram, on cocktails rather than wine. It did feel a bit, we weren't sure about that. You know, we just didn't know New York enough. And we couldn't find a space for multiple reasons. The spaces were, the Upper East Side is extremely hard to find a good space because you're really looking at a very small block of streets where it might work. You don't really want to be too deep in the 80s plus. You don't really want to be too low either. So it was extremely hard to find exactly what we were looking for. And we found like one or two that could work, but the rents were crazy. And they honestly didn't want to work with us. You know, we were young entrepreneurs that had funds, but no credit history. We were nothing.
And no track record.
No track record.
Yeah.
Yes, I had articles and like so many things in France, but they were like, who cares?
Yeah.
And we started visiting in other neighborhoods, but to be fair, I really wanted to be in the West Village or Tribeca if we're not on the Upper East. And the space of Le Chêne now, which was former Gab's, just honestly didn't speak to me. It really, the whole place looked pink everywhere. It was really hard for me to imagine anything else but that. There is no connection between the ground floor and the basements directly from the restaurants. You have to go either from the elevator in the building or from outside. So there were few things that felt like this place was not for us. But the one thing that made me want to pursue this was when the landlord was like, listen, I want you guys, I will do anything to make you feel like this place is for you. And I was like, this is crazy. This is someone that I feel could work with us towards a common goal. And having a good landlord is so important.
Oh yeah. I mean, anywhere, but in this city, yeah.
Someone that is actually understanding, someone that wants you to succeed. And it felt extremely reassuring. And he did that. He really did support us in many ways. And still to this day, we talk very often. And I'm so grateful because I absolutely adore this neighborhood. I love how it's a nice blend of regulars from the neighborhood, but also people that are just wandering around and tourists. And it's just really, really special. And I think when we signed, a lot of people were saying that Carmine Street was a bit cursed, that it wasn't really a really nice street in the West Village. It wasn't charming. But I'm so glad for that because, you know, we're doing our own thing and we're also building our own little ecosystem around Le Chêne, and that's all that matters.
So I was into dinner recently. You guys were nice enough to have me in. As you know, because and Victor, our cinematographer here, was with me. But I just was so taken with, as I say, everything about the restaurant. I love the feel of it, the energy of it. I absolutely love the food. It's still, even after sitting here for an hour with you, it's hard for me to quite reconcile that you haven't always had a love affair with French food, because I mean, as we say, the food you're doing there, it is unmistakably French, and there's so much personality and so much, it seems to me like so much passion in it. And a lot of it's quite beautiful. You've gotten a lot of attention for the Pithivier that you
Yeah.
do, which is just so stunning. Um, uh, and again, I love the staff. I just think is just tremendous there.
It's important. I think the food is obviously very important. It should be good, but the staff and people that care, people that want you to have a great experience, it's so important. You know, we don't talk about flipping tables. We don't talk about specials as an upsell. We talk about who will want that, who will enjoy the steak. Who? You have to read the room. It's not for everyone. Some people are not going to want to go towards that. And we really need to put each other in people's shoes. You know, you cannot just try and upsell anything just for the sake of better tips and stuff like that. We really try and have that approach. That is very much French, because in France, the server doesn't really earn more if he's upselling because everybody's on salary. So it's a very different mentality. But we really try and have that ingrained, in a sense that reading people is the most important thing in front of house, and making sure that people feel seen and valued, and also that every day should be a celebration. You know, it's not just Friday, Saturday. It should be the same on a Tuesday.
Yeah. Now, does this go back to you said you did a lot of reading about hospitality and whatnot, but I'm just wondering, does this bring it back around to your family? Because you've alluded many times in interviews to your parents being foodies,
Yeah.
right? So you spent time in restaurants. They liked, I assume.
I would say my parents are not foodies to the same way that I am. For example, they're not looking for something too complicated, but they love going out. So we would go out at least 4 times a week. That's what I am.
Right, but the question I have is, I imagine, you know, a lot of people who end up in kitchens don't necessarily spend a lot of time as a young person in dining rooms. A lot of times, the main experience they have with nice restaurants is in the kitchen as a cook, right? Not so much in the dining room. You were lucky to experience growing up, going to restaurants and having I would imagine, a sense of what the guest experience should be, and what was a good guest experience and what was a bad guest experience. So as you're talking, the things you just said about what makes the Chêne special, from the guest point of view, I'm imagining that's probably informed by some early memories of yours, or opinions maybe that were formed in childhood. But I don't want to put words in your mouth. Is that accurate?
I think that is probably my biggest strength. And also with Ronan, like together we go out so much. We force ourselves to go out so much. When I was younger, my parents, I always said to them, because you're not paying for my education, please, you know, pay for a few experiences that I feel like I need to build my palate, you know, and my culinary knowledge. And so they would send me alone to like 2 Michelin star restaurants or 3 Michelin star restaurants. And this really, really helped me understand what great food is, yes, but also what a great restaurant experience is. And I do think that this maybe is what differentiates me from another chef. It's just because when I see, for example, a server coursing something and I feel like it's not right because this is not how the guest is going to enjoy it, then I will course it differently and make sure that people have the ultimate experience. You know, it's not just the food. You cannot just put 3 plates on a table and while they're eating a tartare, the scallop is on the table and it's going to get cold and they're not going to enjoy it as much. And you have to think of, okay, how is a 2-top going to experience this meal? How is a 4-top going to experience this meal? It's not the same. You cannot automatically course things the same way because it's just not. If it's a couple, if it's a business dinner, everything is different. And you have to have that knowledge.
This is music to my ears. It makes me want to come back to the restaurant. I mean, it's true. There's so many times you go to dinner and listen, these are first world, you know, problems, and you're like, why are they bringing this right now? Why is this happening? Don't they see, even sometimes just the size of the table?
Yeah.
Yeah, I love it. Last question for you. You guys live above the restaurant, correct?
Yep.
And again, you got Ronan into this, and you guys are now partners in doing this. I would just love to know, there are some people who might think, oh man, they're partners in the restaurant, they're partners in life, they live above the restaurant. Do they just live and breathe the restaurant? Can they not turn it off? Is that a good thing because running a restaurant requires so much attention? If you could just speak to sort of I guess just the logistics of your life, and if you would recommend that to people. I mean, this is a classic European notion, right?
Yeah.
It's very romantic. We live above the restaurant.
Yeah.
But I would just love to know how you're feeling about those decisions right now.
I mean, I'm extremely happy. I think we are extremely happy. I don't think we could be where we're at after 8 months of opening if we're not above the restaurants. And second of all, I don't believe in a work-life balance if you're trying to create something meaningful. I think when you want to create something that is bigger than you, and we're not achieving this in any way, but if you're trying to do that, there is no world where you can turn off. Like there isn't a single day where we don't talk about logistics, menu development, anything. It's just, when someone, and I like to any person that is a pioneer in their field, you look at Facebook, you look at Amazon, you look at Jean-Georges, Alain Ducasse. These are people that have no chill in a way. They
No off switch.
There's no off switch.
Yeah.
And I do think that it's what it takes. And people that want work-life balance, that's great for you. But you cannot expect greatness if you want some time off, at least at the beginning.
There's a time in life to push.
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
So yeah. So I mean, I'm okay with that.
Great. All right. Well, I just want to say before we wrap up, I said this to you before. I know Tuesdays are your least favorite day to do interviews because it's the first day back at the restaurant after your days that you're closed. It happens to be the day we shoot, so I appreciate you making an exception for us. And I think you're a great guest. I love your restaurant, and thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you.
And that is our show for today. Again, my great thanks to Alexia Duchêne for joining us. If you live in New York City or find yourself visiting, be sure to go check out Le Chêne restaurant in the West Village. Please go check out Mise, the recipe operating system for culinary professionals, at getmise.com/Andrew. And thanks to Gage & Tollner for providing our location. If you live in New York City or find yourself visiting, please go check out Gage & Tollner and its upstairs bar, the Sunken Harbor Club. Links to that on the episode description for today's show. And our thanks, as always, to San Pellegrino for their longstanding support of the pod. Andrew Talks to Chefs is the property and a production of Table 12 Productions Incorporated. This episode was written, booked, and hosted by me, Andrew Friedman, produced by Alleyne, and shot, edited, and mixed by Victor Michael Thelian. If you'd like to support us, we ask that you do that by telling a friend about the show, posting about the show on social media, and or rating and or reviewing us at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. And if you are now watching us on YouTube, please be sure to like and subscribe. Our thanks, as always, to After School Special for our music. Please check out their album, Double Barrel, Single Entendre on iTunes. Please follow us on Instagram and also, as of this episode, on TikTok. @Chef Podcast is the handle on both platforms. Thank you for listening, and we will be back soon with another episode of Andrew Talks to Chefs.